Good morning, everyone. This is Sarah with Harrisburg Project. First, can everybody hear me? Can I just have someone in the questions pod say yes? I was having a little bit of an audio problem, so thank you. Got it. Thank you so much. Okay. So some housekeeping items before we get started today. First of all, if you have questions that you want to ask during the session, you can ask them in the questions pod. If you don't know where that is, look for a little orange arrow. It will open up your GoToWebinar menu, and you will have some options there. So the questions pod. Someone says I have an echo. Does everybody have an echo? Okay. All right. So if you have an echo, it might be that you have maybe you need to mute your, I don't know what audio you're using, but it sounds like maybe you're using double. Thank you. So you need to mute your computer or mute your phone or both. I'm not sure how you're on. Okay. So your GoToWebinar menu, you should see a questions pod. If you want to ask questions during the session, feel free to do that. I'll answer those as we go through the session. If I don't get to it immediately, it means we're going to talk about it in an upcoming slide. In addition, I'll have time for questions at the end also, so if you think of something at the end. I uploaded the handout for today. It's very similar as it's been the past 5 or 6 years, so no big changes this year. The only big change is that we have an extra week for child count to get completed, so we're getting an extra preliminary snapshot this year. So hopefully that will help some of you a little bit. I know some of us down in the southern part of the state, we missed a whole week this year already. So hopefully that will help you if you didn't have, you weren't able to work during that time period. So, all right, we'll go ahead and get started. Remember, if you do have the questions, let me know. Also in your flyout, you may see a chat window. Please use the questions pod. I won't see the chat, okay? So we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing about the child count is that we're collecting it on February 26th. We're talking about the certification today. What I want to make very clear to everyone is that you will not be able to do this certification until March. So I know I'm talking about it today. I just want everyone to have the opportunity to see what will be required of superintendents after we collect the child count. So we want them involved now. So it's only fair to offer a training and show you what they're going to be expected to do, but you cannot do it now, okay? We have to actually collect the child count first. So who needs to certify the child count? We'll talk about the snapshots and the due dates that we are doing right now, okay? So we have snapshots every Friday. We've had 2 already. We've got more to come. iStar access, how you can get that. If you are brand new to iStar, if you are a superintendent coming to this or someone that they have designated to do the child count. How to navigate the child count display. It's not difficult. There are just some extra screens that may not be valuable to you right now, but you at least want to know that they're there and you can come back to them. How do you actually approve the child count in iStar? Super easy. You just click a button, okay? You have to be during that time period though. What happens if you don't do that? We've never had that happen. So hopefully that won't be an issue. And then support and help information. So how you can get a hold of us if you're running into any trouble with this. All right, who needs to perform the child count certification? So what is going to happen is right now, you're working on the child count data. You're making sure that you have all of your records entered into iStar, deletions done, edits, those kinds of things. You want to be completely prepared by February 26th. That's the due date. At 11:59 p.m. on February 26th, the system will lock out. You will not be able to make any changes to the child count anymore. After that time period, we have a short, we set aside 2 weeks. Usually we don't take that long, but we have a time period where ISBE will perfect the data, make sure that we don't have any duplicates. If there are any issues they can resolve, we will, that we make a combined effort to go in and work on that. And so If anything, you may have a higher child count than what you did on the 26th, because maybe we're able to look at assist enrollment and say, oh, you should get that. We'll end a record or something like that. We will not be making additions. Okay, so it's only going to be edits that would follow assist enrollment, or eliminating duplicates for residential tuition kids. So that's kind of what goes on during that time period. Again, if you look at a calendar, it's going to set aside a full 2 weeks. It has never taken that long. So after that time period is when the certification will open. So it's the responsibility ultimately of the district superintendent to perform the certification. However, they can designate another district representative to perform the certification. So if you have the rights in iStar, you're a district security administrator, and your superintendent says, you as the director or you as the coordinator or the psych deal with the data more, you're going to know if it's accurate. Please sign off on this. With that being said, those people need to be involved now, because once you have to come in and make the certification, you can't go back and change the data. I won't lie, we have a handful of people that are upset by that every year. Why would I verify a number that I don't think is correct? Now is the time to make sure it's correct. We have sent out numerous forms of communication. We've added another tool this year of sending an email on Fridays to say, hey, we had a preliminary count today, go in and check. I mean, we're making every effort to let the superintendents know that there is a requirement in iStar for them. And so that's something that, you know, they're an audience that we don't reach out to often, once a year essentially. So we're making every effort to make sure that we get that done, but that we're talking about it now. And we've been talking about it for 2 weeks. And we talked about it in December also. So they can designate someone to come in and do this as well. Regardless, they have to log into iStar and complete the task. All right, here's a glimpse at what's going on right now and what's to come through March. So right now, you know, you're making sure you can get into iStar if you're going to have to verify. You're attending online trainings like today. We're taking our preliminary snapshots. We've already had the 10th and the 17th. So every Friday at 7 a.m., the ISB IT team or the iStar IT team runs the child count. Essentially, they do the same thing that they're going to do at the very end, but it's just a preliminary status. So they'll show you on the child count status button what your child count would be if we were to take it each Friday. Gives you an idea of where you're at, and then it allows you to compare to the previous 2 years. So you're able to say, I'm 100 kids low. What's going on? What do we need to do? And that's, again, everyone needs to be involved during this time period to know where you're at. So we have 5 more preliminary snapshots that will be taken. So every Friday, all the way through the 21st of February. And then that next Wednesday is the final. So this has been bumped back a week. So you should have extra time to get this done this year. And then we'll do what I mentioned earlier from the 27th to approximately March 13th, probably before then. There will be a lockout, which just means you can't work on approvals during that time. You can work on personnel, you can run reports, you can view data. You just can't edit student approvals during that time period. And then once we're done with that, we'll open the system back up, and then it will be time for the certification. So at the latest, March 14th, the certification will open, and it has to be done by the 28th. So again, all of our due dates, I mean, essentially you have until 11:59 p.m. of that day. At 12 a.m., it's going to go into a lockout mode. With this, we've never had that happen. So we've always had the certifications in, I think maybe a couple years ago, we had 25 districts out on the last day, and we were able to get them. So, you know, never had that issue. But the thing you want to think about when because I always get the question, how long do we have? Just because you have till almost midnight doesn't mean that we're going to be around till then. So our hours are 8 to 4. If we're on the phone with you at 4 o'clock, we will stay with you. But if, you know, we're free at 4, we're going to go home. We're not going to know if you have a problem at 6 o'clock that night. So try to have these things wrapped up before then. And that goes for all of our due dates. So how do you get to the certification screen in iStar? Well, if you've never been in iStar before, it is located inside IWAS, the Illinois Web Application System. So this is our first layer of protection, as is for many applications at ISB. So IWAS houses a lot of systems, and we're just one of them. So our system's going to be under reporting and special education, and you're looking for that iStar Special Ed link right here. So as a district superintendent, you should have automatic full access. If you do not, you need to contact us so we can make sure that happens. If you are not a superintendent, then you're going to have to go through the security request to get the authorization that you need, or the security roles that you need to do this, if your superintendent has designated that for you. Once you log in, you're going to be on a landing page or a home page, and down at the bottom, you'll see a button that says current child count status. You click on that button. So it's very straightforward. You don't have a lot of clicks. Once you get into iStar, it's going to be on our main screen. Once you click on that, you're going to see what your current count is and the previous 2 years. So what are we looking at? Well, we've talked about child count several times already, last year, this year, but just as a refresher, these are students that were active on December 1 of 2024. They have to be approved, which means they can't have errors on the records. So that's why we're sending you emails on Monday. They're telling you these are the errors that you have on students that were active on December 1st. Are we sending you all the errors in your database? No, we are just focusing on the kids active December 1 right now. So keep that in mind. Also, they have to be checked to include on approval. So when you're looking at an approval record, by default, that box is always checked. So it needs to be checked if you want to report that to ISB. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a tracking approval record for you only. Okay, so you want to make sure those are checked. Under our reports, our application reports in iStar, there's a report under approvals that you can run that will tell you if any of these records are unchecked. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. You may want to take a look at that. If your count's down, that could be why. Another thing that we get a lot of questions about that isn't displayed on this screen is that for IDEA child count, we're only going through the age of 21. So sometimes we'll have questions, and this is great. These are great questions because these are people that are paying attention and they know how many kids they have. But sometimes they'll say, I should have had 50 kids, but I only had 47. We'll go look. 3 of the kids are 22. So you have to serve them through 22. You have to let them finish the school year when they're 22, but they're not going to be counted on child count after the age of 21. So keep that in mind as well. So here are our snapshot dates, again, showing our final on February 26th. Okay, so this is what you're going to see when you click on that button. If you're a cooperative, you're going to have view access of that screen. You're going to be able to see all of your districts. You're going to be able to see current, previous 2-year counts. You're going to be able to see if they have verified yet. So if you're trying to keep an eye on your districts during the verification period, you can go look at that screen. Okay, it's going to show you. Again, it's read only. You have no power to do the verification. At the end of the day, regardless of the relationship between a co-op and a district, the superintendent, the resident district, is responsible fiscally. Okay, and they have to sign off on this. So it's a federal requirement that the district representative sign off on it. So the co-op will not be able to do this on their behalf. When you click on the name of your district from that landing page screen, you do get a little bit more information and some breakdowns about that number. These may not mean anything to you right now, but I can tell you that personally, working with districts on LEA determinations later in the year, so probably like in September and October, we start to look at these screens and we use these if we have districts that are in a needs intervention monitoring process. So these screens can be helpful later. It doesn't mean that they're helpful right now. Right now, maybe you're just looking at the total count. You're not concerned about the breakdowns, and that's fine. But don't forget about these screens because they may be helpful to you on something else in the future. So I use, again, personally, mostly by EE, but you're going to see it by fund, ethnicity, and age. And again, maybe not helpful to you right now, but as you're scrolling on down through there, you're going to end up seeing your verification button. So you will have to go to that screen regardless. So sometimes people want to look at the count, but then they want to know where are the kids? Who are the kids? If you have, you know, 4,000 kids, maybe it's difficult for you to run this report and it be meaningful to you. But if you have a smaller database and you want to know, why does my count look like this? I need to go see if so-and-so is on the list. Then each Friday, this snapshot report will update. So it will not change throughout the week, but you can come and look at who are the kids in the count. Okay, so each Friday, this report gets updated after they take the child count snapshot. If you are working throughout the week, so between Fridays, you make a lot of changes and you want to see, where do I stand? You want to see a report of what have I done since Friday? Run the report above. It will be ever changing. This one will be stagnant. It's only going to change when the child count process runs. Okay, I have a question about the records that are unchecked. It just so happens that this is the same screen. It's the approvals not reported. Okay, I think that's right. Wait. Yeah, I think that's right. Approvals not reported. Yeah. So when you click on that and look in the description, that should be part of the description that it's unchecked. Okay. All right. So not only can you run that snapshot report for the current preliminary SNAP, but you can also look back at the previous 2-year counts. I don't know if that's helpful, to compare the reports from year to year, because the kids change. I mean, that's just kind of typical, but it's there. And so what you need to remember is that since that report only updates when the snapshot process is done, that means that the previous 2-year reports have not changed since the snapshot of that school year. So they're going to be stagnant as well. And then another thing you need to think about is, after you certify your child count and the system opens back up, that doesn't mean that you can't make any changes for the entire year. So if you get to April and you find out that there are some students that were active at the beginning of the school year and you just simply didn't know about them, you didn't get the paperwork, you didn't get the notification, your communication process failed somehow in the district. It happens. That doesn't mean that since we've already taken child count, you can't put them into iStar. You absolutely can. The worst thing we would want you to think is that, especially if you have like an orphanage student, that you can't put them in and make a claim. You absolutely can do that, but it will not change your child count. That's the only thing to keep in mind. And again, we know it's not going to be perfect. It's your role is to make sure that it's as accurate as it can be on that date. Some of them may be perfect, and that's great, but things happen. So just keep in mind, it doesn't mean you can't go back and edit data during that time span after we open back up. It's just not going to change and reflect your child count. All right, so how do you actually perform the process? You will click on your district name here, scroll down to the very bottom and click verify child count numbers. So it's very straightforward once you get in there to perform the process. Once you have done that, then you're going to see a status of verified, and it will tell the IWAS user login name that verified the count. So mine is S. Nelly. So if I was a superintendent at this school and I came in, I click the button to verify, then it's going to say that it's verified by S. Nelly, and it would have the date that I did that. Okay. So we have reports where we're able to go back and look in previous years, of course, and that's on record because it has to be reported federally as well. But if you have questions, and sometimes we do, somebody will be curious as to kind of like, who did this last year? Maybe you're a new superintendent and you would like to know, who did it previous years. So again, if the superintendent is not going to perform the verification, you need to make sure that you've got your access set up, your security roles set up to do that if you've been designated to do so. We can help you with that, but the superintendent will have to be involved in approving that. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on your failure consequences because we've never had this happen. Of course, you know, in the instance that it would, then the funding and disbursements department would freeze your flow through and preschool grant funds until the certification is completed. You know, again, we will have a handful of calls every year of unhappy people because they can't change the count. Well, again, that's why we're trying so hard to get the communication out to all the districts now. We've been asking you to update your contacts. We've been probably bugging you to death here lately with the forwards and the emails and the news briefing articles. And again, we added another email that we're going to send on Fridays, but we really, really want to get the word out now because we don't want to put anyone in that position where they're forced to certify a number that they don't agree with or don't know anything about. So we want to get that communication open now. Again, talk about the snapshots and the opportunities. Now is the time. And I will be, another thing I'll be honest about is that after the due date for the final snapshot, so after February 26th, we've never had that open back up again. So it's not something that they're going to allow. So if you miss the deadline, there's not going to be an extension. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, I will take any questions that you have. I realize this, you know, it's pretty straightforward. Somebody said, is there certification guide we can share with the person responsible for the certification? You can share this PowerPoint with them. If you don't want to give them the whole thing, then give them this couple screens back that shows them the button that they need to click. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. But this PowerPoint shows all the steps of what they need to do. Again, if you don't want to share the whole thing with them, that's fine. You can show them the Iowa screen and show them the screen that has the button on it. So I will take any questions that y'all have. Fortunately for you, this is a pretty short session. There's not a huge requirement here, but it's a big deal. We moved this due date back. It was our idea. It was my idea to move it back. I wanted it to be later because every time that this is due, I am at the IAASE conference, which was held previously in Springfield. And so I said, I don't like to be gone on the due date. And I know that other people are there. So I know they don't want to be gone on the due date. So we moved it back a week, and then they bumped IAASE back a week too. So for those of you that attend those trainings or attend those conferences, I'm sorry, we tried. So I'll just wait a few minutes if you have any questions. And if you need to come back to this session or refer someone to the session, it will be recorded, or it has been recorded. It will probably be up on the website early next week once we get the closed captioning done. Okay. All right. So first of all, on youth and care, have a question about youth and care. How does it affect the count? Well, if you don't have them coded as youth and care and you think that you want to know if they should be, you need to check with us. So you need to send us the SysIDs here and have us look at the DCFS list and see if they should be or not. We'll tell you if they're eligible for orphanage and if so, what months that they are eligible. We just got December file yesterday, but we have not been able to run the statewide report yet, so we're just kind of fielding those calls as they come in. We'll work next week on the full list. As far as it affecting your child count, I mean, I know you would want it to be accurate. You would want them to be marked as orphans on child count, but does it change your count? No. Doesn't change your total count if they're in as a Fund A right now, but it's going to change those breakdowns that we were looking at. So, I mean, yes, we want it to be as accurate as it can be. So if you have questions about those, again, you need to email us the SIS-IDs for the students that are in question. And remember, on Youth in Care, you're going to see regular ed kids too. So don't ask us about regular ed kids, just special ed kids. If they don't have a fund code at all, they need to be added into iStar as an E or an F. If they do have a fund code and it's an A or a B or an X, that's where we need to check as well. So let us know. And just a blanket for everyone, if you think you have orphanage kids and you change them from for an example, a fund code A to an E and you get errors, check with us first. Don't immediately change them back. The DCFS file, not just the DCFS file, but the DCFS file and the SIS data may not always match, and the system may not be able to figure out if it's the same child. And so what we'll do here is we'll figure that out. And so we have to do what we call an override sometimes, because you know, the child's name may be wrong between systems, the date of birth may be wrong, and in a nutshell, artificial intelligence can't figure out it's the same child, but usually we can. So just let us know. Same thing applies to the unreported tab. They shouldn't be on the unreported tab if they're not IEP kids, but sometimes it happens. So yeah, if you see a child on unreported and you know they're not special ed, then you don't need to put them into iStar. Okay, as far as kids that were marked graduated in SIS, your SIS person probably needs to double check that they can't go ahead and enroll them this year. I know that that's something that happens commonly. They make a mistake and they put them in as graduated instead of, they put them in as graduated with diploma instead of graduated with certificate. And some of these kids are going to continue because they're in special ed. So they need to double check that there is not something that can be done to allow for those kids to be enrolled this school year, because there's a possibility this could go on for 3 years if those kids are going to go through 22. So we want to make sure that that can't be done. And I'm not positive on that they can, but I thought that maybe there was a workaround because it was done in error. Otherwise, if they never have an enrollment, unfortunately, they will not be able to be in iStar. Okay. I don't see any other questions, but if you think of something, please email us or call us. Okay. All right, I thought I was going to get another question. So, all right, so if you think of something, again, email us, call us. That's what we're here for. Don't worry if you have to do that 2, 3, 4 times a day. This is going to be a busy time. Right now, though, we're not super slammed. So if you have a lot of questions and you have some free time, now's the time to call or email us and get those questions answered. Again, if you're waiting on Youth in Care correspondence, we're working on it. We aren't able to run our report like normal right now, so we're waiting for that. And we will reach out to you on our own. But if you have questions in the meantime, that's fine to go ahead and inquire. So I will see everyone at the next session. I hope y'all have a good rest of your week and stay warm. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.